Let's get started. By the time most women hit their late 30s, something subtle has already changed. The wake-up alarm feels louder, the afternoons heavier, and whatever used to feel like momentum begins to feel like dragging. This is not just mood or willpower, it's physiology. It's the curve of cortisol across a day, a rhythm that can protect you when it's healthy and wear you down when it's not. I'll walk you through the science, the practical fixes, and the moments that matter. Stay with me until the end. If this resonates, subscribe and hit like so you don't miss the rest of what I'll share. The morning Maya first came to my kitchen table, she moved like someone hauling invisible weights. She was 39, a project manager, mother of two, and what she described as functioning burnout. Her hands wrapped around a mug whose steam fogged the window. Her voice had that brittle politeness of someone who had learned to pretend she wasn't exhausted. "Tell me about the curve," she said. "Why does everything feel harder now than in my 20s?" I wanted to give her a single name, the cortisol curve. What I gave her instead were 10 practical truths, not magic pills, but daily lifelines, each one a simple lever that nudges that curve back toward alignment. I don't list them like a textbook. I tell them as scenes because bodies and lives change in scenes. Mornings, meetings, kitchens, late-night feeds. Here's what I told Maya and what I want to tell you. The 10th thing I said was to protect the morning. Picture your body as an engine that needs a clean spark at dawn. Cortisol should peak early, helping you wake, feel your focus, and then gently fall toward evening. But in many women over 35, that first peak is blunted or delayed, leaving mornings foggy and evenings wired. Why? Chronic stress, erratic sleep, light exposure at night, and blood sugar swings conspire to confuse the brain's clock. Practically, grab light within 30 minutes of waking. Stand in a sunlit doorway for 3 to 5 minutes or step outside with your breath, even in winter. Skip a sugary breakfast that spikes insulin and prompts counter-regulatory cortisol in the mid-morning slump. Instead, aim for protein plus healthy fat within the first hour, a handful of nuts, a yogurt with seeds, or an omelet. Studies show that consistent morning routines help restore the cortisol awakening response. It's not dramatic overnight, but it's foundational. Maya tried this the next day. Sun on her face, no doom scrolling, a scrambled egg eaten standing by the window. She told me later the light felt like flipping a switch inside her skull. The 9th point I made was about sleep as the nightly repair session. Think of sleep as time in a teacup, small, concentrated, essential. Poor sleep flattens the cortisol curve by preventing the nightly nadir, the low point cortisol needs to reach to reset issues and allow growth and repair hormones to pulse. Less slow-wave sleep equals less repair, which equals more inflammation and more fatigue. Actionable. Prioritize dark, cool, and predictable nights. Remove screens an hour before bed or at least dim blue light. If you work late, use warm lamps in the evening and consider a short wind-down ritual, tea, a few pages of a book, a slow breath pattern. A 20-30-minute nap earlier in the afternoon can be restorative. A late nap will confuse the cycle. Clinical research links better sleep architecture with improved metabolic markers and mood. Remember though, individual sleep needs vary. Maya started blocking an hour before bed for silence and a hot magnesium bath. She said the bath felt like a reset button, and that phrase stayed with her. The 8th lesson was about blood sugar as a cortisol trigger. Imagine cortisol as the engine's governor. When your blood sugar crashes, cortisol surges to pull you back from the edge. Repeated peaks and valleys mean cortisol is constantly asked to intervene, which over time flattens its rhythm and raises baseline levels. Keep meals steady. Pair carbohydrates with protein and fat. If your day is full of back-to-back meetings, carry a protein-rich snack, boiled eggs, cheese sticks, or a small packet of trail mix. I warned Maya about habitual caffeine on an empty stomach. It's not the enemy, but timed poorly, it's a stress amplifier. Research connecting glycemic variability to stress hormones suggests that stabilizing blood sugar is a low-effort, high-return strategy. She began prepping little boxes of balanced snacks on Sunday nights. The simple act of having a small jar of almonds at her desk calmed her mid-morning. The 7th truth was about inflammation and edible sunscreen. Chronic low-grade inflammation makes cells more vulnerable to stress, and certain foods act like an internal sunscreen, not by blocking sun, but by protecting mitochondria and membranes from oxidative damage. Turmeric, curcumin, oily fish rich in omega-3s, colorful berries, and cruciferous vegetables fit this role. I explained sulforaphane from broccoli sprouts in plain terms. It's a youth-promoting signal the plant uses to defend itself, and when we eat it, our cells listen and turn on repair genes. Studies are careful but promising. Adding these foods is low risk and likely beneficial. Practically, sprinkle turmeric into stews or make a golden drizzle for soups. Aim for 2 servings of fatty fish a week or an algae-derived omega-3 if you're vegetarian. Add a half cup of berries to yogurt most days. Maya liked the idea of the edible sunscreen. She started blending frozen berries into a morning smoothie and would laugh, saying it felt indulgent and like armor. The 6th insight, feed your mitochondria. Cortisol dysregulation is intimately tied to mitochondrial function. When mitochondria are sluggish, energy dips, fatigue deepens, and the stress response becomes more expensive. Nutrients like coenzyme Q10, magnesium, and the polyphenol urolithin A, made by certain gut bacteria from compounds in pomegranate and walnuts, help mitochondrial turnover and resilience. You don't need to memorize molecules, you need habits. Move daily with light resistance work, walk after meals to engage muscles, and prioritize iron and B vitamins if you're deficient. Low levels quietly drain mitochondrial output. Where supplements are considered, consult a clinician. We don't treat the story, we treat the person. I cautioned Maya against chasing every biohack. Instead, she'd start with 2 walks a day and a weekly strength session. The first week of squats in her living room made her calves sore in a way that felt honest and hopeful. The 5th piece focused on the gut as the conversation partner of cortisol. The microbiome educates the immune system and even produces metabolites that influence mood and the HPA axis, the brain's stress center. Fermented foods and fiber-rich plants create a microbiome that can gently coax cortisol back into balance. Recommendation: add a spoonful of sauerkraut or kefir or a little miso to soups. Aim for a variety of plants across the week, different colors, different textures, so you feed diverse microbes. Clinical trials show that certain probiotic strains can lower markers of stress and inflammation. It's not a cure-all, but it's a quiet supporting actor. Maya, who'd always leaned towards sterile convenience foods between deadlines, started keeping a jar of kimchi in the fridge. The first time she woke to make herself an evening snack and reached for it, she described the tang as a small, defiant pleasure. The 4th piece was about movement that signals safety rather than threat. Not all exercise is equal for a stressed HPA axis. High-intensity training has its place, but when cortisol is already high, too much hard training without adequate recovery keeps the axis activated. Think of movement as communication. The right message is we're resilient, not we're under attack. Integrate calm efforts, walking, yoga, light strength, and schedule hard sessions thoughtfully. Emphasize breath and restoration. Resistance training twice a week preserves muscle and metabolic health. It also stabilizes insulin and supports sleep. I showed Maya a simple circuit she could do between meetings: 2 sets of bodyweight squats, push-ups, and a plank. She did it in the hallway and discovered that short movement breaks carved out mental space more effectively than scrolling. The 3rd thing I pointed out was the hormonal duet, estrogen and cortisol. As women approach perimenopause, estrogen ebbs and flows, and estrogen normally buffers stress responses and supports brain plasticity. Lower estrogen can make the HPA axis more reactive, and if cortisol is already dysregulated, the duet becomes cacophony. Mood swings feel sharper, sleep frays, and recovery slows. This is biological, not imagined. Practical clarity: get a baseline with a clinician if symptoms are intense. There are targeted interventions from lifestyle to medical therapies, but the first line is sleep, movement, and nutrition that supports hormonal resilience: zinc, vitamin D, adequate protein, and healthy fats. I reassured Maya that perimenopause does not mean capitulation. It means a new set of needs. When she heard hormones have a duet, she smiled, relieved that something had a name. The second lesson was social scaffolding and boundaries. Chronic caregiving, job strain, and the cultural script that women must carry emotional labor silently are enormous cortisol drivers. Social support acts like a buffer, a friend who listens, a partner who shares the load, a community that says you're not alone. Equally important are boundaries, not a moral failing, but a physiological necessity. Action: negotiate concrete changes. Ask for help with school drop-offs one day a week. Turn off email after a set hour. Say no to one extra committee. These are tiny experiments that send big signals. Studies in psychosocial stress show that perceived control and social support are powerful predictors of cortisol patterns. Maya called her sister that night and asked for babysitting twice a month. Her throat unclenched when she said it aloud. Finally, the primary lesson, the first and most transformative thing I told her, was that the curve is plastic. It can be reshaped. Cortisol is not destiny. Small, sustained changes tilt the balance. Morning light, stable meals, sleep, microbial variety, anti-inflammatory foods, movement that restores, social repair, and targeted clinical care when needed all add up. The body responds to consistent, gentle signals over time. But theory alone doesn't change a life. The arc between knowledge and change is often a messy scene. 2 months in, Maya crashed. It wasn't a dramatic collapse, no hospital, just a day where the email pings felt like gunfire and she couldn't string 2 sentences together in a meeting. She sat on the bathroom floor, the world rearranged into bright, intolerable fragments. That night, she sent me a message. I did everything, and I still hit a wall. Did I fail? We met the next morning under damp coffee steam. I didn't have a tidy clinical answer. I had a map and an apology. I hadn't prepared her for the non-linear path. Improvement rarely follows a straight line. You improve, stall, backslide, then climb more sustainably than before. We revised the plan. We added a check for iron and thyroid, cooled late nights further, and I urged her to tell her manager that she needed a temporary adjustment in deadlines. She did, hands shaking, and the manager, to her surprise, agreed. That single structural change reduced her baseline stress in a way that even the best supplements couldn't. The slow, humbling truth is that biology and life conspire. Women shoulder invisible labor, hormones shift, and external demands surge. But the curve can be coaxed. Small practices become scaffolds. In the months after the bathroom floor day, Maya's mornings softened. The light ritual became automatic. The kimchi jar earned permanent residency on the shelf. Her walks moved from obligation to clearing bellows that let the next breath in. If you've read this far, imagine your own morning light, your own small jar of fermented food, your own stretched boundaries softly folded back into place. Think of cortisol as a curve you can negotiate with 1,000 tiny, consistent choices. A few practical notes before I close. None of what I shared is a guaranteed cure. Research suggests these strategies can help many women, but individual results vary. If you have a specific medical condition, are on medications, or are experiencing severe symptoms, consult a healthcare professional for personalized assessment. Be cautious with supplements and hormonal therapies. They have benefits and risks that deserve medical guidance. In a year from that first kitchen conversation, Maya paused in the doorway where the light pooled in the morning. She looked for a moment like someone meeting herself after a long trip. "It's not fixed," she said, "but I'm not collapsing into the evenings anymore." That sentence is exactly what progress sounds like: partial, real, and steady. If this conversation helped you see one small, testable change to try this week, light in the morning, a protein-rich breakfast, a walk after lunch, a jar of fermented vegetables, start there. Consistency matters more than perfection. If you want more practical deep dives on the biology behind each of these steps, or recipes and week-by-week plans that make them easy, let me know. Subscribe or follow so I can bring that next. For now, take a breath, look at your day, and choose one small thing to change. The curve is waiting. She learned slowly to treat change like a negotiation rather than a battle. When the morning slipped back into fog, she didn't call it failure, she called it information. We learned to translate each stall into an adjustment, an earlier wind down, a stronger protein at breakfast, a shorter meeting schedule on heavy days. She stopped waiting for a single fix and started treating the week like a laboratory. There are a few pragmatic habits that helped her most, ones you can test this week without fanfare. Anchor one point of the day to light. Open a curtain at the same time every morning or step outside with your coffee for 5 minutes. It resets sleep hormones better than trying to force a long sleep straight away. Choose one protein-rich breakfast for the work week and make it non-negotiable. Hard-boiled eggs, Greek yogurt with nuts, a chickpea scramble. Predictable fuel steadies appetite and mood. Build a micro-walk into the day. 10 to 20 minutes after lunch is often enough to blunt the afternoon dip and reduce reactive cortisol spikes. Add microbial variety in tiny ways, a spoonful of plain yogurt, a handful of fermented vegetables, or a weekly miso soup. These are not magic bullets, but they shift inflammatory tone over months. Reduce the number of decisions after 8 p.m., a simple checklist for evening tasks and a set bedtime ritual protect sleep without willpower wars. Name one boundary and test it. 1 zero email evening per week. Week, 1 meeting you decline, 1 household task you delegate. Social help matters more than we admit. These look modest because they are. Their power lies in repetition. Biology responds to patterns, not promises. Clinically, we kept an eye on 3 things: screening for reversible medical contributors, iron deficiency, thyroid dysfunction, inflammatory markers, checking for sleep apnea when symptoms suggested it, and maintaining an open line with her primary care provider for medication adjustments when needed. Psychotherapy remained part of the plan, not as a luxury but as a scaffold for the behavioral shifts to stick. Pharmacology, when it entered the picture, was framed as a temporary support for stability, not a permanent label. What surprised both of us was how social geometry mattered. Maya's small requests, swapping a school drop-off, asking a colleague to co-lead a presentation, signaled to others that she was negotiating her capacity. People had been willing to help but needed permission. Her asking reconfigured the workload around her in ways supplements never could. That structural kindness lowered her baseline stress in a measurable way. Over the following year, the changes layered. There were months that felt more like maintenance than victory. Steady sleep, manageable evenings, a few late nights that required repair the next day. Then there were sudden, bright improvements, a stretch of mornings where the energy felt closer to her old baseline, a weekend away where she slept and woke without the knot in her throat. These were not proof of cure, but proof of possibility. If you are reading this and wondering where to start, think of the next 7 days as an experimental window. Pick one habit from the list above and commit to measuring the outcome. How many mornings did you open the curtain? How many days did you actually take that walk? Write down a simple metric: mood on waking rated 1 to 5, hours of steady activity, number of nights with blackout curtains, and treat the data as neutral. Small wins create momentum. Small failures create information. A final practical note on expectations. People often want a timetable. I can't give you one that fits everyone. Some people notice a shift in weeks, others in months. What matters is the fidelity of the experiment. If you change one variable and track it, you will know whether it moved the needle. If not, change another. If the noise persists, heavy fatigue, cognitive fog, marked anhedonia, suicidal thoughts, seek urgent medical evaluation. These strategies are supportive measures, not replacements for clinical care when it's needed. Maya's story didn't end with a dramatic reversal. It ended with something quieter and more durable, a relationship with her own patterning. She learned to read the signs before collapse and to ask for adjustments before the strain became a crisis. She cultivated a few habits that supported physiology and a few requests that reshaped her environment. She stopped treating cortisol as an enemy and started treating it as consciousness. A chart that could be nudged, not a sentence to be served. If any of this resonates, try one small test this week. Let the outcome, not the rhetoric of trying harder, be your teacher. Consistency will outmatch intensity. Over months, those little experiments stack into a different baseline. I'll keep tracing the science, translating studies into steps that fit real lives, and I'd like to hear what you try. If you want deeper protocols, meal plans, sleep schedules, or how to approach your manager with a request she might accept, say so, and I'll map them out in practical week-by-week form. For now, close a curtain, make a tiny promise to yourself, and see what 1 week of attentive habit can do. The curve is not a verdict, it is a conversation. Start one this week and listen.